on Infernal Shrines. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
Alrighty. Now, one thing you were discussing at the very start of the show was whether or not some of these teams will be kind of emulating some of the draft strategies that we see in Premier. This is probably one of those games where we could see a bit of a deviation from that.
Yeah, exactly. So these picks that we'll be seeing on this map, again, show us the diversity that we can expect out of the Open Division and out of some of those teams who may not have the, the coaching that some of the Pleb to Pro guys have after, we've seen, Hacky and those boys in BlizzCon. I mean, these guys are grassroots. They're your dudes next door. They're your mates at uni. They're your mates that you go to school or work with. And so they're going to have some interesting draft choices or different picks that may not be meta. And it may just work out for them, GL.
You never know. Some things do work when you're not really expecting it. But one thing we can kind of expect is the Blaze getting taken off the board. Well, it's not so much expected, but it's very understandable. We saw its strength in the last game, and we've kind of talked to death just what he brings to a team. So very strong pick, and just wanted to get that one off the table right off the bat.
And Capital know what they're about in that respect there, GL. They're just going to remove that pawn or slash that strong piece straight off the table. Wonder whether or not we're going to see the same thing coming out of Spectre in a Mayev ban, which would be quite interesting. But, yep, there it is.
At literally every level, you're just like, we just do not want to deal with that. But the Sonya first pick, that's an interesting one. We didn't see it at all throughout the previous draft, but with her rework, well, kind of a rework, she's still quite
It's
strong.
a rework.
Yeah, it's a rework. It is technically a rework, but she's still very strong, and she can kind of output a lot of pain.
She puts out a truckload of damage for a solo laner with a little bit of tankiness. So, seeing a couple of posts online around the place about the direction. Yeah, exactly, she should be an assassin. You bang on, right? She should have a lower health pool if she's going to put out this much bloody damage. But look, I'm pretty sure that that's going to be Aureus on the side of Capital playing on that Sonya. I've definitely seen his skill with Sonya in some of my games, and it's quite prolific. So,
and one thing to mention is that they kind of is understandable, especially with that Blaze ban, because sure, Sonya can bully around a lot of the solo lane matchups, but Blaze can just sustain through a lot of it. So just wanted to get rid of that, try and go for a matchup in a solo lane where the Sonya can really apply a lot of pressure and just win that out. So it makes a lot of sense to go for that Blaze ban. But on the other side, Genji and Stukov, two heroes that we do see a reasonable amount. Genji not so much lately because of, I think, the way the support meta has been playing around. Sure, the Uther does come in to help with that, but because we're seeing a lot more of the Stukov and the Malfurion, we see Genji a little bit less. Sure, there are other reasons.
No, I think you've hit it there, GL. It's because he mainly runs around exactly the same as he does in Overwatch. I need healing. He goes in, he takes a buttload of damage, and he'll get CC'd every time. You see him Swift Strike in, he's not getting out. You saw it in the HGC, in the Eastern Clash over the weekend or last week, and every time I saw a Genji, he was just getting blown up. Dragon Blade was out, he'd get that D shield. As soon as that went off, bang, teams would turn on him and just put him down.
And sometimes we even started to see, because of that playstyle where you want to be kind of diving in with that Swift Strike, and more often than not, you're going to receive a lot of attention at that point. We're starting to see more and more X Strike just to try and get out of those sorts of situations. So we're not sure if that's going to be an option for this one, but that's actually quite a lot of beefiness on that front line for, I think that's Capital on blue, that this game is going to have to push through.
Yep, it is indeed Capital on the blue team, GL, and Spectre on the other side. Looking at their current draft, we've got some tankiness in Sonya for that solo lane, but a Johanna and a Greymane pickup. So looking to put out that solid DPS, we're probably going to see Cursed Bullet coming out of this Greymane, I'd imagine. And I say that just because of the play style that I've seen Capital employ before.
Yeah, it is an option. Well, I think it will very much depend on how Spectre fill out their roster. If it's going to be a very frontline heavy lineup, they could go for it. Or even if it's just one very solid frontline that they want to really deal with to allow much more access in and around team fights, that is an option for them to go with. But just looking at what Capital have already, all three of those heroes clear minions rather efficiently, especially when you're looking at when we get to the shrines, when we get the objective on the board. all three of those heroes can clear that out solo rather efficiently, it could allow some more macro play coming out from Capital throughout those phases.
Very solid point you make there. So they may do the one man left behind and 4-man rotations around to try and deny pressure on the Infernal Shrine's minions. What do they call them in the EU and the NA regions? Little dudes, I believe.
Little dudes, yeah, the little
Shrine
guys.
Guardians. No, let's just go with little dudes.
I'm pretty sure they're the Guardians. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they're Shrine Guardians. We know that.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I'm just making sure.
An interesting ban coming out there, GL, with the KLFAS. Doesn't look like Capital want to be dealing with punishment in the form of flame strikes coming at them left, right, and center. And Malthael and Tyrael picked up.
Yeah, the double angel combo, and that is a very strong lineup that we're just looking at right now from the side of Spectre. They have a lot of teamfight potential with things like the Sanctification. That's the one I was looking for. I was going to say Consecration, but that's a different thing altogether. But Sanctification, that is a very good tool for them, especially when you have things like Genji and Malthael who want to be diving into a team fight. If you have that area of invulnerability, it gives them so much more freedom to play in and around these teamfights. And if we are going to get teamfights on those shrines, we're looking at the side of Capital to be stacking up a fair bit, and that could really get punished by a Malthael and a Genji with invulnerability just going through your lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. The Sanct is going to prove heaps of value for the Genji, especially if Tyrael dives in with his Eld Ruins, pops that Sanct, Genji can Swift Strike in and D-Blade to his heart's content. And the Malthael, I mean, if he takes Tormented Souls, which you can do, obviously.
It's a little bit iffy. Yeah, it's a little bit iffy at this point. Tormented Souls is sometimes picked, sometimes it's Last Rise. It's just depending on the compositions. But yeah, it could get very well punished. But looking at what Capital had finished off their lineup with, Uther and Lei Ming. So Uther is going to be helping out that Greymane, giving him much more freedom in and around team fights. And the Lei Ming Greymane combo, that's a lot of reset potential. And if we do actually go with go for the throat on the Greymane, which looking at what Spectre have right now, I think is a possibility. Lei Ming plus a Greymane would go for the throat. If they start getting those kills, they are just going to rip Spectre apart.
I concur with you on that, buddy.
The wait is over.
Cassia, very solid last choice. Get some blinds off onto that Greymane and the Sonya. So we're going to see a lot of value on Cassia there. And if Capital aren't careful, GL, she could really turn the tide of pretty much any battle for them. I mean, she's a champion that, a hero that a lot of people just sort of undervalue and don't place too much threat on. And she just stacks up that damage, mate. Stacks it up. Yeah,
well, one thing I'm a little bit worried about is that this Spectre lineup is rather squishy. You've only got the Tyrael as the solo tank, which more often than not isn't the best. It requires teams to have a very, very strict level of coordination for it to work out, because Tyrael, he doesn't bring CC to the table unless you're going for Judgment, and at that point, go for your, just go for it, I guess. But he doesn't bring the crowd control, and looking at what Spectre have, they don't really have crowd control. So a lot of these team fights are going to be, I'm not sure how they're going to play it in and around these team fights, but I'm a little bit worried for them.
I hear you, and I agree there, GL. Look, let's get cracking into game 2 of the night. On the blue side, we have got Capital, ladies and gentlemen, with Slick Sloth on the Uther, Alex Chan on my Lei Ming, Beefy on Greymane, Aureus on the Sonya, and Tyran on Johanna.
And on the red side, we have Spectre. We have VK3 WTF on the Malthael, Aspire G on the Genji, Gummy on the Cassia, Phyto on a Stukov, and Detour on the Tyrael.
Gummo on the Cassia. I love it. All right. We're seeing a very, very standard split here, guys. No 5v5s, no quest stacking talents other than Uther to really worry about. So off we go. Both teams being very reserved in that top lane, staying behind their respective walls.
Yeah, both teams just playing it very cautiously, as you mentioned, respecting the potential coming out from both sides, or I guess kill potential, because even though I was mentioning that they don't have any lockdown on the side of Spectre, they have a lot of damage coming out from those the triple DPS that they have.
Indeed, and Spectre looks like they've got a lot of lane clear as well, which was interesting.
Yeah, I feel as though it was just who got to the lane first at that point, as we do get a little bit of engagement. It was just about the fact that Spectre got to the lane first. It allowed them to just impose their presence on the lane. That Capital were just playing cautiously, not wanting to overextend so early on in this game. And now that they are starting to get the proactive side of on the proactive end of this rotation play, now they can utilize their wave clear to really get ahead of the pack.
And that's absolutely shone in that little mid clear there. We see Spectre a couple of seconds behind on their rotations. Interesting play so far, going straight for a Khazra camp there with Beefy and Alex Chan on the Li Ming, just popping that down right quick.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you do get when you pick up the Greymane is very good neutral clear. He does clear out a lot of those neutral camps very efficiently, and that is going to be a decent amount of pressure that they can work with, and it's going to force the reaction out of Spectre early on. It will allow Capital to try and make some plays elsewhere, but it looks like they actually are going to go for an invade at this point because of the pressure coming in on that mid lane.
Yeah, and Slicksloth sort of showing his face up around that midsection for some reason. He's sort of pulled away from the rotation along with that Li Ming. Very odd. Anyway, heading down to the bottom Khazra camp now with Greymane and Johanna. They are pulling that one out very, very quickly and trying to get that little bit more of an edge to try and lock Spectre down into this bottom lane.
Yeah, and so far this is just essentially what I was expecting. Because you have the Greymane, you do have priority over those neutral camps. But I am a little intrigued as to why Spectre aren't really prioritizing camps for their own, whether or not they want to try and utilize it or time it with the objective, but they're just not really making any of much of a play towards it, and they're just playing a very reactive game at this point. They're forced onto the back foot, and now they just have to just be reacting to whatever Capital is doing at this point.
Well, we see Aureus taking on the Fallen Shaman camp up the top here on the left while the Shrine's activating, and he's almost about to go down to the camp, actually, which is a bit interesting. We've got a little bit of an invade down there, GL, as well on the Khazra camp. Aspire G on the Genji just trying to poke with those shurikens, but ultimately they're going to lose this one. That's another camp they're going to have to clear out, while Tyrael is still down the bottom, struggling with the Khazras.
Yeah, Tyrael, although he can help out lanes a fair bit by shielding them, especially if going with the Justice for All at 1, it's a weird way of looking at wave clear. It's like not directly clearing, but just making sure that your minions don't take damage, and it just progressively pushes it. So he doesn't have the best wave clear, but he can help push the lane.
He definitely can, and look, he's just going to bail on that Khazra camp and let them do their little dirty work pushing out that tower in the mid while they need the rotation up onto these shrines. So Capital already at 22 little dudes as we see the first engage of the game with Tyran on Johanna getting a great condemn on 4 or 5 people. Genji diving the backline onto the Li Ming, but ultimately Spectre getting pushed away.
Yeah, they're trying to make their way onto the point. They're trying to at least pick away at some of their squishy members, most notably that Li Ming, who is taking a little bit of damage, but they're just going to keep on going for that fight, as in the end the objectives go down, and now the fight is going to happen coming out from Capital. They're just going to start cleaning up members. They just stuck around a little bit too long, and they was not able to get any real play out of that beside Spectre, and they're just going to get punished for it.
Malthael and Cassia getting exploded very quickly there from the CC and the lockdown from the Capital team. And they're going to break through this top fort wall. They're going to get a little bit of damage onto that fort, but if they're, they're going to try and engage. They want this fort down, GL, which is a smart play. It's going to open up that top of the map for them a little bit, and hopefully for a bit of an arcane punisher later on. So it's not going to fall by itself, actually. There we go.
Yeah, usually those first punishes, especially if it's taken so quickly like that, like as soon as it's spawned, it's pretty much a 0 to 40 very quick push. You're not going to be getting too much out of it unless you get a whole bunch of kills and just force away your opponents. But that's essentially what you're expecting out of that first Punisher. Take down the front wall and just let the Punisher do whatever. They did get a nice little extra by taking it down very low, but you're not really expecting much more than that for that first Punisher. So be happy with that. Just get out with your life and just work with the map control that you've been working with so far very well.
And the rotations coming out of Capital are on point. They are utilizing every advantage that they can in capturing those Khazra camps at mid game and taking the bot ones. So splitting the team up nicely. And just a side note for everyone at home, the Khazra camp that they took just before that shrine kicked off, the mid fort wall is completely gone. So leaving that one alone with Tyrael coming up the top, completely destroyed their middle fortifications.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that rack up in the experience difference. Level 9, or a full level in favor of Capital, and they're really starting to close in on that level 10, and that should be able to kick in as soon, or by the time that next objective comes up, and they should give an opportunity for Capital to really start to impose their presence onto Spectre and really exploit their advantage.
Spectre's unfortunately not going to be able to really contest this shrine unless they get a level and a half in very quick order as we get level 10 online for Capital. No surprises, we've got the Blessed Shield, Wrath of the Berserker, go for the throat on the Greymane, Wave of
Storm though,
and a Divine Storm. So interesting. No love for the Greymane. Uther wants to be the Battle Mage tank healing guy.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense, especially when you're looking at the playstyle that Spectre want to be utilizing. They want to be going in and utilizing like a kind of a death ball with the Tyrael, the Malthael, and the Genji. They just want to be diving in, and also the Kaiser can throw herself in.
Chinese bush meta GL. Oh, no. Of all the people that could have walked into that bush, it was Genji, so that was close. I was looking forward to that.
I'm not sure if he was aware of that, but a great engage in the mid lane. There's a Divine Storm where they just demolished 2 members.
Cassia and Stukov get exploded. We see the Divine Storm come out directly after that Hammer of Justice. The lockdown was real there, GL, opening up a big opportunity here for Capital to extend their lead out, and Spectre's going to have to play catch-up once again.
Yeah, they've been playing catch-up essentially this whole game. The only real proactive play they've made so far in this game was literally the level 1. Where they got to the lane, or got to the minions first.
And they killed one minion wave quicker.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's just been, the wave clear's been a little bit more efficient on the side of Capital. They've been just ahead of the curve right now. They've been prioritizing the neutral camps really well, and it's just allowing them to just play so much more proactively. We do have heroics now on the table for Spectre, so if they're going to have to make the play, now is a pretty good time to make it.
Now is a great time while they're on the same talent tier, and we've got an engage here with Sonya whirlwinding her way through Tyrael's face. We've got Stukov completely denied. Good night. Genji with an X strike straight across the whole team there. Tyrael gonna fall. Li Ming, sorry, Genji down, Cassia down. That is almost a team wipe as Malthael also goes down. 5 men completely destroyed. Capital coming out on top.
That was so close to being very good for Spectre, but just not able to get any of those killing blows. And at that point, once the first went down on the side of Spectre, it was just resets for days. We saw the Li Ming just throwing out spells, spell after spell after spell. And going into that, the heroic advantage was in favor of Spectre because of that gank we had earlier on with the Divine Storm being blown and also go for the throne. Those were tools that were not available in that fight for the side of Capital, but they were still able to get it to work out. They were able to pick up the Stukov, not able to get into that sanctification. And at that point, that's a lot of power in the team fight from Spectre just down the drain.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of a cheeky play there coming out from Capital GL with Genji, Greymane heading down bottom to take out that Khazra camp, and also getting them the opportunity to pick up this mid Khazra camp to stack on top of this Frozen Punisher. So this mid fort is going to go down, and potentially they're going to be opening up that keep wall on the outside there. I really think Spectre need to start being a little bit more tactical with how they're going to pick these fights and engage when they can engage and not get caught in that fog like they just did.
I think that fight that they took on that objective, it could have worked out really well. I think the part where it just went downhill was when the Stukov was not able to get into that sanctification. He was stayed a little bit too long with that lurking arm and didn't make it towards the sanctification and just got cleaned up. And at that point, there was not enough tools in the arsenal for Spectre to work with, and they just got cleaned up time as we're just seeing the Punisher finally go down. But it looks like Capital, they want this objective, and they are going to go all in for it.
And they want the keep GL, and they're not going to leave without it. Stukov gets caught.
That's
sanctification saves him this time, GL. That was well placed there by Detour. Well done, Spectre, for saving your healer. However, at the cost of a keep.
Yeah, so it was very well played, managing to keep the Stukov alive, but as you mentioned, they still lost the objective, as this Genji is playing very aggressive, wants to go in. They all are just going to keep
Souls is out here, a Divine Storm on the Malthael. We've got the bouncy ball of doom. Slicksloth is looking like he's going down, but he will be hanging around to try and heal. Li Ming falls to the Genji with the resets. Turan on the Johanna has just got to walk away, but that X strike from the Genji really initiated that fight, and Malthael's Tormented Soul certainly ripped up some damage there, GL.
Yeah, and that's one thing we really need to see from this lineup is just those very long protracted fights where you're able to get those resets happening. But meanwhile, throughout all of that, the Sonya was on, I think it was the Sonya or the Grey Man who was on the back line, probably both of them, just cleaning up this Stukov yet again. So they're always, even though they're getting things in their favor, they're still losing out in some areas.
Yeah, absolutely right. We've got 16 talent tiers now online for Capital, and this is going to start really doling out the punishment. As we know, 16 is where we start seeing a lot more impactful talents coming on just before the Storm talents, if you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Capital are putting on a little bit of a clinic here against Spectre, and Spectre seem a little bit rattled, but after that Sanctification and the little engage that they had there where they picked up the Li Ming and the Uther, GL, I feel like they might be looking for a little bit of a comeback and wanting to show us what they've got.
Yeah, they have the ability to get some of these kills, but the problem is that, as I mentioned, they don't have crowd control, so it's very hard to lock people down. They need to do that kind of weird fight for it to work, and I'm not sure if Capital are going to allow them to let that happen again. There were not all the heroics available on the side of Capital, and it showed. They were not able to keep themselves alive. They did manage to pick up a kill, but the Genji and the Malthael were able to chase them down and pick up those kills. But there's still Capital still in a very good position. They have level 16. They can take this fight however they want, and they'll probably be able to get out of it pretty well.
And Jill, I think that's the main point that we're looking at right now, and you raise it really well, is that unless Capital allow Spectre to engage on them and to get a kill, then they're not going to with the lack of CC that they've currently got. We've got Uther up the top there, taking out that fallen Shaman camp all by his onesies, Battle Uther. And we've got Greymane that just took out the Bokazra camp. So again, asserting dominance over these camps, painting that map entirely blue. I don't think the team of Spectre have picked up one individual camp themselves.
I'm trying to think. I think there might have been one of the Shaman camps earlier on that they did pick up, but beyond that, yeah, it's been a very blue map, and Capital have been utilizing that to the full extent, as we can see, just camps pushing down left, right, and center, and it's just allowing them so much more freedom around the map to just play however they want, just keep on racking up these advantages, and then just forcing all this pressure into the base of Spectre, and they just don't really have the tools to deal with that.
Well, look, this is the beautiful thing about Heroes of the Storm, GL, and ladies and gentlemen at home, is you can come back from anything on any map. It's the way the game is designed and built. And if Spectre really start playing everything the way that they need to be playing, they've got a good opportunity to try and turn this. So even though there's a Punisher bearing down on their second keep, they may have a chance here if the Sanctifications are good and if the burst damage is strong enough. And the Genji gets some resets. Look, stars may align, plans may align.
That's the thing. When you start going through all the things that need to work, it is one of those, the stars need to align as the engagement goes in, and Fighter taking so much damage right now.
Slick comes in with that Hammer of Justice, but doesn't find his mark. He's waiting to get that Divine Storm off. Oh, Malthael gets burnt. And we see Detour just edging away. Fido on that Stukov trying to get away. Tyran pulling in the Cassia. Genji caught in a very bad position. X-Strike to try and get away. And kaboom, good night, sir. Whoa, good night, Cassia coming in from Li Ming Orb. And Tyrael taking a boatload of damage there from the Punisher himself. The core is falling. GL, that is game, set, match. Capital takes it out over Spectre.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too much to deal with on the side of Spectre. They just didn't have the tools. As it just felt like in the draft, they really shot themselves in the foot by not having any crowd control. It made it so much harder in those fights to lock anyone down. And we saw on the side of Capital, they not only played the team fights really well with the crowd control that they had, but they also played the map incredibly intelligently, getting the head start on those rotations and getting those mercenary camps to really just keep on applying pressure and force Spectre onto the back foot.
Bang on, mate. That's why we've got you here. Thank you for letting us borrow you from the Premier Division. I could not have said that any better myself, and probably wouldn't have. GL, the damage coming out from the Genji in that game was quite surprising, actually. Just having a look over some of the stats, like his ability to put damage out on that back line was really good. But mate, without that CC, they essentially lost this one at the draft. I'm sorry to say, but I have to concur.
Yeah.
Look, boys and girls,
yeah.
we are going to go to a short. Oh, sorry, Jill.
I was just going to say that you can do all the damage you want, but if you're not securing those kills and your opponents just keep on bouncing back with the healing, sure, Uthe can struggle at times with his healing output, but with the way that the Genji play pattern was working, it lined up pretty well with how Uthe's healing was coming in. So they were not able to get all that much advantage out of the damage coming out from the Genji, and because they just weren't getting kills, they were not able to translate that into any meaningful advantages.
Yeah, look, if they had have got 1 or 2 kills at some key times there, and I don't mean to reflect on this like they did a horrible job, but if they had have been able to take out that Li Ming, for example, or the Greymane with some burst damage, they would have got the resets onto that Genji, and they would have had a much better time of it, I think, GL.
I think that's about it. All we can really say about that one. It was very well played from Capital, and they're going to be, I think, 2-0 on the night for now.
Yeah. 2-0 so far, as we're going to crack into game 3. Just after we have a short break, ladies and gents, we are going to wait for the next bunch of contestants to finalize their existing games. So we shall return momentarily. Stick around.